Hello, hello. I think we're live now. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Hello, my name is Reno Jackson, and welcome to our second virtual Artists on Artists talk. Today, I'll be speaking with Jodi Minnis to discuss the breadth and depth of Minnis's process in creating her works for the exhibition currently on at Turn right now. The Artists on Artists talk is a series that situates two artists, one exhibiting artist and one interviewer, me, in dialogue based on the commonalities and differences in theory and or praxis of each artist's practice. Through an investigation of each other's practices, the series will provide further insight and context to our processes and approaches to art making. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
the little fun intro.
You did good.
Yeah, thank you. I
You're
tried. I was very professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, how are you? I was
I'm
thinking.
good.
Yeah,
Things are really good. How are you?
I'm good. Just in London, just cold, but wish I could be in the Caribbean.
It's hot, so yeah.
But yeah, maybe let me start with just I guess how did you come up with this idea with the salt shakers, and what's the history behind these Bahama Mama shakers, and are they from Bahamas, or are they just something that has the name Bahamas? I've personally never heard of them because maybe it's a very locally Bahamian thing.
Mhm.
But how did you find these and push your practice into this? And then was it something that happened when you first heard about the exhibition and the concept of scatter seeds, or was it something
Mhm.
you were working on before? So
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the salt shakers have taken over my practice for the past too many years now, but the work started with the words Bahama Mama rather than the salt shakers. So I was in Tampa at the time doing my bachelor's, and of course, being in, the South, the Southern US, also being in Florida specifically, which has like very deep historic connections to the Bahamas, and thinking about tourism and all of that because you can't escape it even though you're outside of it. I was thinking about the ways in which Bahamians or Caribbean people are exoticized. And as I was like having these negotiations and these thoughts, I like multiple things happened at the same time, which is kind of like serendipitous, which was my grandmother was on the cover of a book called Bahama Mama, and it was done by a local photographer who went to the different islands and then photographed like the like older women on the islands. And
Hmm.
because my grandmother was living on one of our southern islands, Rum Key, she was photographed and placed on the cover of the book. So I had like her image in my head with this book, Bahama Mama, across her forehead. And at the same time, was working at the National Art Gallery, and they had these salt shakers that said Bahama Mama across the bottom of it in
Mm.
their storage. And at the time, like we wasn't sure of what the provenance was. So I was like, I hope they didn't sell it in the stores, which they didn't, thank God. But yeah, so it was like these two words are like following me so much. And then I thought about the other ways in which the words appeared, which is in a drink. So there's a local like daiquiri drink called the Bahama Mama.
Hmm.
Um, and then also, I think someone randomly called me Bahama Mama in a club once. I was like, I was done.
Yeah,
Cut the camera.
that's it.
That's it. But so that got me thinking about multiplicity.
Mm.
And after thinking about multiplicity, I started thinking about stereotypes and like the expansion and the reduction of my personhood. So I think of the salt shakers as like the ultimate reduction of who I am.
Mm.
And then I'm like toying with them, this like commodity that exists as a souvenir, as a, token, as, a little tchotchke or whatever. I'm thinking about her in like domestic spaces being a representation of like domesticity.
Mhm.
But I'm like, she's actually kind of like fierce, like holding this, um, gripping this rolling pin so tight. So
Mm.
the more I started investigating, just like the attributes of it, the shape of it, the fact that it holds salt and so on, that then gave me almost like too many years, maybe like 7 years of content to kind of like play with and like flesh out. Um, to then like manifest into using them into this body of work for this show.
Mhm. I mean, that's a lot to go off right there. I mean,
Yeah.
which is great. But, um, what have you recently started looking into collage elements with these, or is that not something that's new? Is that something that's been ongoing for the last 7 years? Like how like, for example, I was looking at the work Margaret's Beach, which has some beads and, paper collage elements, and then it has, sculptural kind of elements as well, like assemblage elements with the hanging sort of piece. So, I mean, is that something that you're experimenting with now, or is that something that's been ongoing?
So that was a good question. You're asking me really good questions, made me think. I appreciate
Yay.
it. But I think it started because appreciated I appreciate printmaking so much.
Mhm.
And one of my um one of my one of my professors in college, his printmaking style was intrinsically collage. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So he would like make prints and then he would like cut them up and then collage them together. And I was like, this is amazing.
mhm,
And then I was like, how do I adopt that? So I've been doing the same thing where I've been printmaking like over the past like 6 7 years, and most of it's like monotypes, collages, and so on. And
mhm,
then I would add like different like elements. So it started with me just using like beads in the work. So I would like sew beads onto the surfaces using like different like papers,
mhm,
using found objects and stuff. So because these are found objects, I decided to see specifically for this show like how they would manifest as collages, as like little like emblems and like
mhm.
I wish I had the word. I don't have the word. But like pose it into like a more of like a sculptural sense. And I
Yeah,
really I'd like into like reliefs rather than just being like flat collages.
yeah.
So I want to play around with that element of it.
I think that's what I was drawn to with it, was that there is such a play. There's more. I hate the word play, but there is there's a different way of viewing it when you add this sort of three-dimensional space to the work. It reminds me. I was at a show recently and I saw some Lubina Hamid work,
Hmm.
and there was a paint like a collage piece that she had, and it was called In the Storm, and I can send it to you later. But it was it's just something that I think is really important, is when is thinking about the role of collage and the role of gathering materials, and these might be environmental factors, things that, beads and different sorts of papers and things that could be from the Bahamas or your direct environment, things that you grew up seeing.
Hmm.
It could also be, from all over the world. And I think that it's really interesting to push all of these things into a space. And that's why I really enjoyed looking at the new work. Um, but
I
one of my questions was
can
also like,
I
oh,
Sorry, can I respond to that?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
sure, yeah, yeah,
sound like
sure,
some good stuff.
sure, sorry.
But I wanted to say that um yeah, you mentioned like this like aspect of like gathering things from around your space.
Hmm.
And for me, that's what my collage work has been.
Mm,
Um, because there's like a innate resourcefulness that I think we have to have as Caribbean artists, where oil paint is like super expensive, acrylic is also equally as expensive. So like when you think about like traditional materials, they're not as accessible as you want them to be. So early on in my practice, I was taught also by like people like Heino Schmid and
mm,
Michael Edwards and so on, um, like to use resourcefulness to your advantage, to like think about the work less about like the materials, but more about like the concept in which you want to speak and evoke.
mm.
And when you look at, I think it's like Robert Rauschenberg, I'm thinking about,
Yeah,
and like Dadaism and stuff like that. I know Rauschenberg and Dadaism is not like in the same family, but
yeah,
those things I quite enjoy. So I enjoy this work in
yeah,
particular, with Reach that you mentioned, um, like that's green tape at the top.
yeah.
And then like the bead scene, I found that in a book that I can't remember his name, but he's quite a prominent artist. He's the same guy that taped the banana on the
Oh,
wall.
the Catalan. Yeah.
Yes. So I think he tried to establish like an art fair in the Caribbean once, and then um
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
Amanda was telling me about this, and she was really mad.
yeah,
She
yeah. But
she
it was
was
like
like it was like some, just a bunch of, like, European dudes. They're like, "Ah, yeah, let's just have a Caribbean art fair, like, whatever," like.
yeah, and it was like such a controversial thing, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
flopped, obviously. But
yeah.
but there was a book made in response to that,
Mm,
um, that said like we made our own Caribbean or something, and I bought the book, and it had these black and white travel images on it,
mm.
and that's where the beat scene comes from.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and there's sandpaper, so I always try to use like some like an industrial kind of material in the work.
Mhm,
And yeah, so that's like when I think about like gathering materials, when I think about collage, when I think about just like even being on the island where like accessibility is something that we have to contend with all the time.
mhm.
I try to imbue my work with all of those philosophies, rather than just thinking about it as like a stoic discipline of just like cutting and mapping.
Mhm. I completely agree with that. I think that, Caribbean artists, we are, and I think it's also, before we talk about art, we also need to talk about Caribbean just in general. We always are resourceful. We had to be resourceful. You had to be sustainable and self-sustainable. And like, I think about my grandparents and my parents, and anytime there was a hurricane or anything like that, people would always they would just do what they had to do. And I think that kind of bleeds into our practices, whether on a bigger scale or smaller scale. But I think it's totally true what you said. I think a lot of people in the Caribbean consider where they're getting their materials from, how they're reusing stuff. And, you see it a lot in the contemporary art world these days, but I think it's something that is really special within the Caribbean region. And yeah, I think I had a really good question, but I forgot it. So
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna just segue to another one. Hopefully, it comes back.
Okay.
But the titles of the works. So when you were titling these works, and because, for example, the one named Margaret's Beach, is that a beach? Where is that beach? Is that somewhere in Bahamas, in Nassau, or in another island? And like, when you were thinking about these titles, were you thinking about defining or redefining scattering seeds, or was it more personal? Because like we're saying, these works have been kind of culminating for like 7 years, theoretically and both materially. Where they just kind of did they all just kind of come together? So yeah, how did you?
Yeah. Great question again. I feel like you're asking me the questions that I wish people would ask me.
Oh,
Thanks.
this is why you talk to artists. This is why you should.
Right.
There should be artist to artist conversations only.
All the time. Yeah. So actually, Margaret's Beach is not a real beach. My maternal grandmother's name is Margaret. Um, so I gave her her own beach in this like artwork. And I think that kind of, I'm gonna like pull back to kind of the conceptual, like thinking of the work to then answer your question, where I was toying with this idea of creation. Like, so April Bay had an exhibition here called I See All the Way Back to Where I'm Supposed to See in late last year, I believe, at Turn. And I was talking to April, and of course, April is so like brilliant. And April was talking about these like archives of a future and the archives of a space that doesn't exist. So she was like getting into this like Afrofuturism, but it was like, it's like retro futures. And I was like, dang, man, my brain like broke. And I was like, wow. I just had to like mull on it and chew on it for a while. And then I thought about April's practice, how, and I've always been quite encouraged by April's practice because the world that she created and is continuing to create is all just an imagined space. And she said something where kind of stuck with me, and she's like, we are living in someone else, the manifestation of someone else's imagination. And I was like, damn, you're right. So I'm like thinking about that. I'm thinking about like creation. I'm thinking about seeds. I'm thinking about so I went like very hard first into like the relationship between, being a woman and like seeds and all that sort of stuff. And then I was like, that's like an easy place to land. How do I like fare, how do I fare off of that? And I was like, what would happen if I create my own worlds in these like images? What happens if like these broken shatters of, these mamas were whole things within themselves? What if this like fragment is a country? What if she's a constellation? What if she's a planet? What if she's a universe? And so on and so forth. And the names then came out of that. So I think there's one that's called We Landed on Clifton and the Whales Wept. That came out of just thinking about Clifton Pier here in the Bahamas, where formerly enslaved people got off of the ships for the first time. And then Black Planet is, referencing like Black Planet, that online space, but also the fact that, this can be a Black planet, spine is like very literal in that, but that's where the titles come from. This kind of like poetics, even down to watermelon. I was having a talk with a friend who is from Palestine and, thinking about like what's going on in Palestine. And I'm like, okay, like we have to like think about these things because like we do live in like imaginary borders, imaginary countries, imaginary like spaces that can be contested whenever someone else with power feels as though they want to contest it. So what does it mean then to be in a space of consistent like birthing, rebirthing, regeneration? Yeah, I think I'll leave it at regeneration.
Yeah, no, those are really good points as well. I think, yeah, it makes me think about as well when you fragment these Bahama Mamas. Is this a sort of fracture of maybe Bahamian identity or perceived Bahamian identity? Like is it reclaiming it, or is it, which direction do you see them for you? Because I mean, when you start to push into a new space of Afrofuturism or this kind of space of liberated imagination, so to speak, do you feel like, for you, do you feel like you're shedding, almost like scattering the seeds? You see what I'm saying there? You're shedding the ideas of the Bahama Mamas by cracking them open, or are you trying to expand them?
I'm thinking about it from a point of that the identity that we have now is already already a fragmented identity. Um, because depending on what race, class you're from, like how you define your identity in any of these spaces varies, right? So if we already live in a diaspora, which means that we are fragmented people coming together in this like space of fragmentation, that means that we have the opportunity to create something new. And we have a continued opportunity to exist in new realities. So the more broken the object is, the more broken the identity is, the more broken whatever is, it gives us more possibility from those broken pieces to pick and choose what we want to keep, create a new thing, discard the whole thing. You know what I mean? So like there's options, and my brain stays in this like expanded possibility state. If something
Yeah.
breaks into 100 pieces, then you have like 1,000 pieces to work with, rather than like, oh, it's broken into 100 pieces, let me bring it back into one. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So
Is that it can
yeah.
exist, it can exist in any format that you're aware of the fact that it's plural, that it's moving and it's changing, and that there is both meanings, I mean, because when you look at them, like they do seem to have traditional kind of racist caricature about them. And I had brought up some notes that I read an essay recently when I was in Chicago. I went to the MCA, and then I looked at some of their programming, and I read an essay on the plane called "Why I Don't Talk About the Body," by an artist called Gordon Hall. And it was questioning the body and the term "the body" and not bodies, because the body lacks plurality. It
Right.
lacks this sort of, it becomes very idealized, like, because when you talk about the body, you're usually talking about a very specific body, and that's not necessarily, it potentially disregards the full range of bodies, the full range of body experience, and the full range of what that means, and like, what is my body, and I have a body, and who, and all these things come up and it's very common in the art world, I think, that people may see the work and just assume that it's tackling one issue. Like, might say, okay, well, it's a black body that's been, like I was saying, like, it's cracked open and it's moving on from the past, and like, and then they market that, and then it becomes this whole thing, right? And so I don't know, what do you think about the idea of trying to push away from, and I mean, it's kind of part of the art industry, the marketing aspect of stuff, but do you think that there is kind of a push towards, almost like an industry or museum push to showcasing marginalized people in a way that isn't really inclusive. You know what I mean? I don't know. Am I phrasing
Yeah.
it correctly?
No, I think I understand what you're getting at. I think that there's
Yeah.
like with marketability comes like this need for the things to be digestible.
Mm.
And then when you attempt to make something digestible, of course you have to like cut it into bite-sized pieces, and you don't like realize the nuance that is being discarded when you do that. And I think that's the trap that we get ourselves in sometimes. Speaking also as like a gallery person who works in a gallery, like we have to be very careful what we decide to omit, what we decide to include, and what we decide to like highlight and focus on, because you can pigeonhole, an artist or a group of people into a singular focus when that's just impossible. You know what I mean? So I
Exactly.
do think that there's an attempt to make marginalized people understandable, digestible, transparent, to an audience, to make that audience comfortable, in hopes that in the comfort of the audience, they will want to explore more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's rare that you have audiences that are comfortable, that want to explore more. They just take what you give them and then go with their business. And there are some people who, do the work and do push past it, who do investigate, who do look for the nuances. So you have to give them credit. but I do think that there's like there has been like this global like push of like, even like blackness is such like a very flat term. Like, like what is it to be black?
Yeah.
That's kind of flat. Because then when you look into like what does it mean to be black in America, what does it mean to be black in the Caribbean, what does it mean to be black in the UK, and so on and so forth, you come up with such like a varied experience that you can't like summarize blackness into one like essay. So yeah, and I think in this work, I try for the salt shakers to be objects, and then to push them out of their objectivity into a personification, and then push them from that personification back into like this multiplicity of an army, and then push them back into like this work here, which is like a personification of me. Or
should we talk about that work as well?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll keep talking. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, I mean, that was basically like my thought process, that there has to be like this like continued like movement between definitions, between realities, between experiences, so that we could like continue to have like this expanded view of all marginalized people.
Because the work Fish it does feel like, and it's interesting to think, but it makes sense now that I know that you've been exploring this theme for 7 years, because this work was painted in 2021. So was it 2021 or?
I think it may be.
Yeah. So, but is this, I mean, I'll let you take the wheel on it, but is this it feels performative almost in a way, like, and it feels like, I don't know, you take the wheel. I don't know.
No, it's okay. I'm like, did I make that in 2021?
That was COVID. We don't remember anything. Don't worry.
No, I think it may be a little older than that. I have to double check my records, but
okay.
But it's really interesting that you said that it feels performative, because I did stage myself for this image. So I did like a whole what do we call it? Recording, like a video performance. And then where I like fried this fish, and I did it very poorly, so I need to actually like redo that.
Oh, you fried the fish bad, or the?
It's so bad. It was my first time like frying fish, so I was like, "How do I do this?" You
never went to no church fish fries, or what?
I did, so I know how to clean fish.
Okay, yeah.
I could clean it. Just the frying part was it.
It's not easy though.
I mean, I could do it now.
I'll look out for that. I'm excited. Let me know when you fry some. Send me some, please.
No problem. So yeah, so I did. Yeah, I staged myself. I had on, a red wig, like this bright red wig at the time,
Mm,
um, and I like put on what I thought like if I was like I kind of personified myself like a typical like working woman.
mm,
Like with the pearls, and then I had on like a very like work shirt and all of that, and this
mhm,
bright red hair, which symbolized like some rebellion to the position. And then I sat in the camera and I like sat and I like ate this fish. And as I was watching the video, I was like, oh, this would be a great still. And from that still came the painting. Um, and it was confrontational for me.
mhm.
And I think whenever I look at the work, I'm like looking at the eyes, and I was like, yeah, this is very confrontational.
Yeah.
Um, but it embodies like a decisiveness and like a security and um a seduction, even with the focus on the lips and the fish. Like this relationship between the mouth and the fish is like very pertinent, but I was gonna say that there's hardly a delineation because some of the like flesh tones are the same.
Mhm,
And that's like what the work was for me. Like it was more about like a decisiveness, an objectivity, standing in like a power and a truth at that time, and while like being imbued with that reduction, which is just like the flatness of the black
mhm.
skin with the same headdress.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it reminds me of some like great Kerry James Marshall paintings in that sort of the way that the approach to the palette, and the tones, yeah, and it's kind of, I really enjoy looking at it. And the more I wish I could see it in person, but I do enjoy that sort of confrontation of it, and you can feel it's almost like it's questioning so many things. It's questioning like the gaze, like like almost like what we were talking about earlier on with some of the first work, Margaret's Beach, is like that sort of exotification sort of thing, like I don't know. I feel like I've seen this image before in my life, like just going to a public place and there's someone just enjoying their lunch, and
yeah,
it's almost like this anxiety has been distilled into it, where it's like you kind of like I think I've been here where
yeah,
there's someone on a cruise ship just looking at you, and you're just sitting there trying to just exist, and
right,
you feel like all of this, like you mentioned, this sort of, you tried to put on a bit of a performative outfit, and it's like you feel like that's how they see you. And I think
hmm,
that goes back again to the kind of question, I guess, of the body versus the bodies, and the similar themes of all of these, like how do we define representation and our own representation of who we are. And I think, yeah, it's really really good work. I like, super
oh,
excited.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at a lot of Carrie James Marshall, Barclay Hendrickson,
Mm,
because I was in a space where we had to paint flesh, and I feel like when you've like gone through like the rigor of learning how to paint flesh with oil paint, like you understand like the nuances of like what that is to do. But as a black woman at a predominantly white school at the time, I had to do like extra work because I was okay. So in like the like in the that's why I keep talking about this, like in the expansion of like learning how to paint like black skin and like flesh, and not just like topically, but like understand. I did like a painting workshop with this artist named Monica Cook, and she was like, you're not just painting like the epidermis, you're painting like the whole like skin layer when you like approach painting. And I was like, whoa, I can't see through my skin like that, but okay. But yeah, I was like, but even thinking about that, like what
mhm,
is like um and once again, like thinking about the body and thinking about like black bodies and thinking about
mhm,
like the nuances of color that you can see in black bodies, where and I think you only get to like flush that out when you like start painting blackness in a way that you realize that, oh, there is something to this, like painting black bodies black because black absorbs all colors. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like it's not like a lazy or a fast approach by, you know, the trailblazer Kerry James Marshall. Like that was such a definitive and considered and intelligent and um there's another word I want to say, but like, but you understand what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it was birthed. Like that decision was birthed. It wasn't reactionary. It was like a birth decision
yeah.
informed by so many things. That when he does it, and when anybody else like follows in his footsteps of doing it, like you have to do it from that same like birthing place of understanding that like there is so much complexity to blackness that
Mm-hmm.
even in black being what it is, that inherent complexity can't ever be flat. So even when I talk about the Bahama Mamas and I'm like, this is a reduction and it's flat, it's like it can't ever be like that flat because black is never that flat. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's not even talking about the experience of within the Caribbean as well, like within island to island and
Hmm.
colorism and local politics and all kinds of stuff, you know. And I think that's why it's important to make work like you're making that challenges what is, you know, what is the accepted figure, or you know, like I feel like my experiences here in the UK, I get these questions a lot of people, you know, they ask me like, am I faking it in my work? Like I've had just weird questions, you know, and I'm like, how on earth would I fake it? Would you
Right.
ask this question to one of your friends from England? Probably not. I don't think so.
No.
But why am I getting this question?
Yeah.
Because it's from a perspective that is new, so it challenges them. And I think that making challenging work is always more important. So shout out to you.
Thanks.
Shout out to you.
Shout out
Also,
to us.
yeah, yeah, shout out to us. Yeah. But is it is the hat, is that the same hat from the shaker
Yeah.
in the painting? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a full, like it's a continuation. Do
Yeah.
you feel like that you keep investigating this imagery in your work, and like Black Caribbean women, females, through the Bahama Mamas, or do you want to push it in a different direction, or is it
I
ongoing
would
for life,
like
or
I would like to stop.
why?
I don't know. I feel like Dr. James asked me a question years ago, and Dr. Erica James said that is, and she was like, "What are you doing with these things?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she was like, "Well, you know, this artist did this artist did that." And I was like, "Yeah, I like looked at these things," and she's like, "Well, how do you like alter it?" You know,
Mhm,
and I was like, that's a good question. And I think only until I started breaking them that I was like, oh,
mm,
this is what she meant. And this is like 6 years down the line, right? Um, because what I found is like in this like wrestle with them is that because of what they are, people love to put them back into the kitschiness of it. Like I've had so much people be like, "Can I
mhm,
have one? Can
mhm,
you make me one?" And I'm
mhm.
like, "That's not the point of the work, guys." And then I was like, am I failing?
Yeah,
Because like it's not being like, you know, but it's like
mhm.
when you're trying to like chop down like the Tower of Babel, you know what I mean? Like, um,
And there's the ethics to that as well, is because when they're presented in a gallery format, they become precious objects. Whether we want to admit that or not, as artists, there is that ethical responsibility. And so, yeah, that I completely agree. It becomes like the antithesis of what you're trying to talk about. You're kind of
yeah. So it like comes like all the way like back
yeah,
around. I'm like,
yeah.
dang it. So yeah, like and I'm okay with like feeling like I failed with it. Because that means that like I attempted to do something and I wrestled.
Mm,
Um, and I feel like this this body of work has been the first body of work with it where I feel like I I made it tap out. Like I didn't tap out, they tapped out.
Mm.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I'm tired of fighting.
Well, there's like a Zen philosophy that I was reading about, and I think it's D.T. Suzuki, a writer, and he was. Oh,
That's okay. It's all right. We'll just wait and let it pass. But I'll just continue talking. And I'll say that, yeah, I think that I don't have much curiosity now. I think that my brain has been quite occupied with, because I also work at Turn as a curator, and I've been like consuming like so many people's like practices over the years that it's hard for me to make from a place that's not like someone else's practice first. Like I have to be honest and say that. Like I have to like sometimes I have to like purge and like make like Tessa's work or your work or April's work or somebody else's work first, and then like get to my work. And the time that it takes to like do that just is too long now. So I want to be bored, and I want to detox, and I want to look at blank screens and go out in nature, and then like start to rebuild like the questioning of my practices from there, to be like, actually, what am I curious about at this point in my life? Like I've been making since I was like 17, like really like vigorously, like, am I still concerned about this? Am I still concerned about that? And like be extremely honest with myself. And then go from there. So that's my hope with like new work, is to like maybe like chill out for a little bit and then come back kind of renewed and with like a new sense of making that's not completely influenced by like this space, you know what I mean?
yeah, no, that's a really brave angle, and also apologies to everybody for that horrible noise. I live in a house with a bunch of people, and there's fire alarms for no reason.
It's okay.
Isn't that great? Isn't that just so great? I love it.
Okay.
But yeah, no, well, that's what I was basically. You pretty much knocked what I was going to say, because to 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 see something, you must unlearn to see it, and then in doing so, you learn to see it for what it truly is. So it's a great part to know when to pause it and say, you know what, I love this. I've learned a lot. And the conversation we've had over the past 30, 40 minutes has been about all of these things that you've developed from it. And so maybe now it's time to put energy into a new project or new research that then, when that cycles are complete, you will then maybe potentially revisit, or maybe not, who knows, but it will always be a part that informs your work. So it's still great.
Yeah.
Still
Thanks.
great. But yeah, I think that's it for time anyways. I think.
Yeah. I don't know if we have any questions. I can check, but I don't think so.
Okay.
Um,
I just worried that another one of these fire alarms gonna go off.
that's
I,
fine.
I don't trust these people in this building, you know.
It's okay.
Well, I
But
think we're good. I think we're good.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't know, but I will say thank you for your time. I
Well, no,
appreciate
thank you for your time, and thank you for anybody who's been here listening and paying attention and sharing this moment. So thank you.
it.
Yeah, it's been real. It's been
Yeah.
real.
And I will just like put in a plug that the exhibition is on view until May 17th, so you can see it until May 17th. Right after that, we have another like dynamic group exhibition coming up, so stay tuned for that. Currently, Amanda and Lauren are in New York doing 154 after showcasing the work of the brilliant Reno Jackson and Stephen Schmidt in Chicago. So yeah, stay tuned for more things from Turn, and we will peace out.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.